Good morning, everyone. We are joining in from Jaipur today. We are going to talk about circular design practice and lead into a research project on an indigenous fiber here in the deserts of Rajasthan. I'm going to just share a presentation. So we are called IRO IRO. We are a circular design practice in Rajasthan, and the fiber that we've been researching on it's called ARC locally, but it has many names, and we'll come to that in a moment. Why do we practice circular design? I was a design student at Indian Institute of Crafts and Design, and I also come from a background of garment manufacturing, where my family set up a garment factory as I was growing up. So I was exposed to how wasteful the textile industry is from childhood, and me and my mom, we'd try and do something with the textile waste as we were going along, and we try and make these baskets, and we try and make these covers with the women who were coming in the factory. So that made two things visible for me, that textile waste is not just waste, and B, that it can be something that creates things of value and also creates employment. In all my design projects, I'll try and include textile waste. Then when my mother passed away, when I was at design school, it became a way for me to be connected to her. And when I researched further, all of these facts came out. And I'm sure we all are aware of these facts, but one that stood out the most was that 1 ton of textile waste reused saves 20 tons of CO2 from entering the atmosphere. That meant that what I did had an impact. That meant that what my mother did had an impact. And that meant that a design-led approach could have a positive impact instead of me just wanting to run away from the fashion industry. We could actually inculcate an action-oriented design approach. So how do we do it? What is IRO IRO? IRO IRO is a zero-waste lifestyle brand based in Jaipur. We upcycle textile waste, industrial textile waste, and now also post-consumer textile waste through indigenous crafts of India. And what we hope to be is an ecosystem that reduces waste, creates employment for artisans, and design functional, elegant clothing and other objects of need. What kind of values are we trying to impart for anyone right now is we are trying to make conscious and consciousness fashionable, and we are trying to we are trying to bring the customer closer to the process of making through any product that they buy from us or engage with us, because if they look at what we are making, they might become curious and they might ask questions that if it was made this way, how are my other products made? So the objective is also to evoke curiosity. So what are the problem areas we've tried to address at the manufacturing units or any textile waste creating system? We upcycle their waste and create zero waste patterns. Now, zero waste patterns are something that exist in the Indian vocabulary for a very long time, and that is what we try to bring in. And we give it a modern day context so that when we are also creating fabric from waste, but when we are creating an object from that fabric, we don't create further waste. So it is a circular design system. At the craft cluster, when I started to engage with these artisans, there were just 3 artisans in the cluster, and they didn't really have enough work. They were being paid 17 rupees a meter. They were weaving khadi, and they were being paid 17 rupees a meter, and they would only be able to weave about 5 meters a day. So that is not even generating a minimum wage for them. So what IRO IRO aims to do is to generate work there and build a unique value proposition within the craft. Now, we have about 20 artisans attached with us. Earlier, when I started, artisans would say stuff like, pay us whatever you like, but now they ask us to pay them at least 600 rupees a meter, or whatever wage they seem appropriate for their work. And that kind of self-confidence and self-respect to have built in for their own artistic endeavors, it's a very gratifying thing to see. On the side of international brands and other could be hotels, could be anyone else, the problem area was that they had a growing conscious consumer, and they didn't, and these are international brands that the manufacturing unit would be servicing. So they had a growing conscious consumer, and they didn't really have a way to tell them to be transparent or to tell them what they are doing with their waste. Now, suddenly with this, they could develop a zero waste collection with us with their waste, and they also get to appear clean authentically in front of their customer base. So these are the types of collection we've done so far. This is from Moonwash, which basically celebrated women throughout history who've been called under the influence of the moon. And Khabardar, which was a celebration of journalism, good journalism in India during the freedom struggle. Cut It Out, it was born out of eco-anxiety. It was showcased at Lakme Fashion Week, and then Interactions. This was born out of pandemic, so it was more of a journal of artists interacting with with themselves, but also taking inspiration from Virginia Woolf and Amrita Shergill. That is how the imagery came about. What we also do is collaborate, because we could upcycle waste from one system. It equally followed that we can upcycle waste from other systems and make the system replicable. So far we've collaborated with 5 brands based in Japan, 2 brands based in Singapore, and about 10, 11 brands based in India. So this is from our collaboration with Doodlage. It's a brand based in Delhi. This is from our collaboration with Matter Prints. It's a brand based in Singapore. We could upcycle about, I think, 500 kg of textile waste for them to produce these jackets. This is a collaboration with the local brand Cotton Rack. And this was a hotel, House of MG. They sent us their old uniforms to upcycle into fabrics for upholstery for them. They sent about 2,000 kilos of textile waste, and it was a project that lasted for 2 years. So now coming to the indigenous fiber research project. What basically is this fiber? It's called akhra or akh, and the biological name is Calotropis gigantea or Calotropis procrea, and it grows during the hottest of regions, during the hottest of months and in the hottest of regions, and it requires no water to grow, and it grows like an abandoned crop because it's a milkweed. So main objectives of this project become of revival of this indigenous practice. Now we lost this practice. This was something in practice about 250 years ago, but we lost this due to colonialism because there was an influx of cotton, and because that was something that the British could go back to Manchester and spin and then sell it back here. So the main objective becomes of this project is to spin the fiber and revive the practice in the region. Finding a way to verify the oral history through literature and scientific intervention, and hopefully to create our own art textile with the available information. Why should we do this project? Because this, as I said earlier, this plant grows without water. It grows as a wild plant. It can generate income opportunities in rural areas. So essentially it grows everywhere. And there are villages in India that still remain disconnected. Even through, that might not even have electricity, but they might have this fiber. So then this becomes at least a way to generate passive income. It can represent Indianness to a global market. It is something that is indigenous to India. So it holds the value of being something that is inherently Indian. It holds a lot of historical significance because apart from the colonial context, it is also a holy fiber. That means it is something that is offered to Hindu deities. Other thing is that it also has a lot of medicinal properties. It's used in Ayurveda. So there are multiple uses of this plant, and it represents indigenous knowledge. This is something we found in our research. The research was co-written by Shivani Sharma. She's here on in the Zoom right now. But this is something we found a Portuguese Portuguese historian had written about the fiber, that it is a kind of silk which groweth amongst the woods without any labor of man. And when the bole thereof is growth, round as big as an orange, then they take care only to gather them. So there are evidences of this fiber being something that was being cultivated, that was being used. And then there are evidences of it being dismantled throughout history. What are the kind of identities ARC has? It is called Madar, it is called Arka, it is called Floss. There are multiple identities it holds throughout the world. Where all could we find it? We can find Procrea in westwards from South Asia, and we can find Calotropis gigantea eastwards up to China from South Asia. What are the uses? Documented uses in history: medicine, secret life, industry. What kind of personalities it holds? It has been written by Sanskrit writers, European botanists, colonial administrators. So that was our introductory presentation on ARC. At this point, if anyone has any thoughts or if anyone would like to contribute or ask questions, we welcome that. All right, so we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we have a film on this indigenous fiber that we'll be screening here. So we'll screen that at exact 8:20. Thank you so much.
The Taj Mahal Hotel is unquestionably the most pretentious one in all of India. One of the outstanding features of Bombay is its sudden transitions from the modern to the ancient. This scene, for example, was taken a few minutes from the heart of the city, where the 15th century is constantly rubbing shoulders with the 20th. These automobiles cutting into this line of ancient vehicles suggest an odd symbolism which typifies all of India, where time and time again the new cuts into the old. But the gap is soon filled in, and the ancient procession goes on in strange defiance.
In many of the villages, the main occupation of the people is weaving. They spin the yarn on the charka, size it, and weave it on the hand loom. Apart from the khadi thus prepared, they also purchase mill yarn and weave it on their looms. Our hand-spun clothing has done much to alleviate the cloth shortage.
These were not as lasting as our hand-spun cloth, but they were cheap. The inevitable happened. Unable to cope with foreign competition, our spinning wheels and looms lay neglected, and millions of our craftsmen were faced with starvation. The immensity of the tragedy was deeply felt by Gandhiji. He was convinced that in the revival of the spinning wheel lay the economic and moral regeneration of India. It could well be again the wheel of prosperity for our masses. Thus was born the Khadi movement, a symbol of India's fight for freedom.
टीचर का इसलिए चढ़ाया उन्होंने कि जहाँ भी कहीं गए उसको उठाया, बैग में डाला, लेके चले गए, कहीं भी बैठ गए, अब हम बैठ करके चले। गांधी जी हमेशा ही अपने हाथ के वो काटते थे, हाथ से बनाया करते थे, हाथ का कटा हुआ बनाया करते थे। आजकल लोग खादी का नाम रख दिया है, सब खादी है। खादी का मतलब क्या है? खादी है क्या वास्तविकता? असली खादी वो है कि आप हाथ से काटो, हाथ से बुनो और हाथ से उसको पीनो, वो तो है खादी। खादी में आज अगर बेरोजगार जी क्यों बढ़ी? खादी बढ़ाई थी इसलिए भाई बेरोजगारी खत्म हो। लेकिन कुछ समय ऐसा हुआ कि उसमें मजदूर को मजदूरी बराबर नहीं मिली, बीच में मजदूर का शोषण होता रहा, कि बीच में मठाधी जिसे कहते हैं वो अपने घर बनाते रहे, बुनकर कत्तीन पे कभी ध्यान नहीं दिया, धीरे धीरे ये लुप्त होती है।
लड़कियां हैं प्रोफेसर बनना चाहती है, तो उनसे तो रोटी नहीं बनती है, बर्तन साफ नहीं होते उसका तो यही भाई नौकरी लग जाओ तो इन बातों में पीछा छूट जाए घर के काम से।
गुजारा नहीं होगा ना इसमें, और एक सर्विस तो सर्विस ही होती है। आगे आने वाली पीढ़ी में सब सर्विस मांगते हैं ना।
भाई मेरी लड़कियां है ना नौकरी लग जाए, परेशान हो आगे जाके हमारी जैसे हम जैसे कैसी कैसी परिस्थितियों से गुजरे हैं उनसे वो मेरी बेटियां ना गुजरे, यही है मेरे बस। जिंदगी में बहुत पड़ाव आते हैं तो हाँ, तो लड़कियां नहीं वो के वो तो आराम से जिए और क्या।
मैंने देखो आपको 3 साल से जब तक यहाँ लगा है ना, मैंने और किसी का काम बहुत कम किया है, मैंने आपका काम ज़्यादा किया है, सबसे ज़्यादा मैंने सैंपल बनाए। वो तो खादी का में तो 30 रुपये मीटर के देते हैं, इससे ज़्यादा नहीं देते हैं। अब दिल्ली का 15 मीटर से ज़्यादा काम नहीं होगा, जो भी पावर लूम पे, हैंडलूम पे तो बनेगा नहीं, 15 मिनट 7-8 मिनट आएगा, तो उसमें मजदूरी नहीं बनती। लीरियो में देखो वैसे तो 80-90 रुपये मीटर के देते हैं सादा के, और सैंपल के 500 से लेके 1000 तक कर लेते हैं अपन एक सैंपल, 1 मीटर का सैंपल आता है। पट्टू में तो अलग अलग रेट होती है, जैसे 1 मीटर में 4 पट्टू आ गए, और किसी में 10 भी आते हैं, 15 भी आते हैं, तो उसके अलग अलग रेट हो जाते हैं।
One of the major drawbacks of industrialization that you can mass produce, and mass produced goods, they are huge in numbers and they're all same. So craft gives you that advantage of being different, that differentiation which is possible in craft, because no two pieces are going to be similar. Since being in India, each space has its own craft, because craft used to be based on the resources which were indigenous to that area. So it helps us become very conscious about usage of things. It helps us connect more to the products, which gives a longer life to the product, and it generates livelihood, and there is hardly any pollution. So I think it holds answers to a lot of cultural, societal, environmental problems which we are facing today.
कॉटन आती है, रुई। यहाँ खेती कम होती थी आसपास, यहाँ पे तो रुई आती थी। यहाँ कॉटन की खेती होती नहीं थी। आजकल तो बहुत लोग बातें हैं, पानी नहीं है, बोए क्या होने लग गई। यहाँ खेती हो भी जाती है उसकी, लेकिन पानी नहीं है, उसको चाहिए पानी नहीं है। लोग 800 फीट पत्थर कटवा करके रह गए, पानी नहीं है। एक बोरी मतलब एक खेत में एक बोरी जब फेल हो गया, 3 से 2 बोरी में फेल हो गया, मतलब एक 8 बोरी करवा लिया। 8 बोरी में 2.5 लाख में 20 लाख रुपए रहते हैं। 20 लाख में महिला रखता है, जैसे जाते हैं। पानी की पड़ी है, लोग तरस गए। यहाँ 4-5 दिन से यहाँ पीने को पानी मिल रहा है, लोग तरस गए। बाहर से टैंकर पानी का मंगवा कर हम यूज में लेते हैं। यहाँ अभी दूसरा एक बोरिंग हुआ है साइड में, अपनी खादी का जो बावड़ी है उसके पास, उसमें थोड़ा पानी मिला तो इससे थोड़ा सा काम चल रहा है।
आंकड़ा तो वैसे तो बहुत काफ़ी होता है जी, उसका अभी तक कोई रिसर्च नहीं हुआ, इधर किसी ने प्रयास नहीं किया। आंकड़े की डोडी में जैसे वो आती है, जो रेशा आता है अपने ऊन में, इस तरह का बारीक रेशा आता है। जैसे अपने कपास की डोडी लेकर के उसको काट करते हैं, उसको काट करके उसके बाद में फैल बनाया जाता है। उसको लेफा भी कहते हैं, फैल भी कहते हैं। ऊन के अंदर भी जैसे बारीक बारीक रेशा होता है, जैसे माइक्रोन होता है, कितनी माइक्रोन की है ये, तो उस तरह से इसका भी प्रयोग किया जाए तो हो सकता है सक्सेस होना। क्योंकि अपने जैसे भेड़ की जो ऊन होती है वो है, बकरी की ऊन जो होता है बाल, उसको भी काम में लेते हैं। ऊन का जो बाल आता है उसका भी रेशा बनता है। ऐसा कोई चीज़ नहीं है जिसका मतलब रेशा नहीं बनाया जा सकता, चाहिए उसका प्रयास करने वाला।
ये गर्मियों के मौसम में ही देता है बस, सर्दियों के मौसम में नहीं।
चौमासे के अंदर तो ये लग जाता है
हर घर में,
फिर गर्मियों के अंदर ये डोडी आ जाती है इनकी, ये डोडी फुल आ जाती है। तो अब ये थोड़ी गर्मी दूर हो जाएगी ना, तो ऐसे पूरा पक जाएगा। ये अभी थोड़ा कच्चा है, महीने 2 महीने में ये पक जाएगा। या अपनी जो मेरी ना ऊन को ना हो कहीं वहाँ बढ़िया वाली ऊन, उसमें ये
अच्छी बेकार तो क्या अच्छी होएगी, चमक देते हैं।
चमक है, ये बारीक है, वो थोड़ा मोटा उसमें मिक्स हो जाएगा ना, तो थोड़ी उसकी सुंदरता
चमक आ जाती।
पास को निकालते हैं उसमें बारीक बारीक आते हैं, और ये है थोड़ा बड़ा, तो ये बढ़िया मिक्स हो सकता है उसमें। देखो उसको हमारे को ऐसे चूनना पड़ता है उसे, ऐसे उसको, और फिर उसमें दाना निकलता है। दाना निकलता है उसको जो अपन ये बोलते हैं ना डाडून, काकड़ा बोलते हैं उसको। गाय भैंस को डालते हैं वो काकड़े निकलते हैं उसमें दाने। ये कई काम लेते हैं, कई नहीं। जो अभी हमारे को पहचान है वो दूसरों को पहचान नहीं है। हम तो कर सकते हैं ये धागा, और उसको मिक्स भी कर सकते हैं, ऐसे भी इसको कर सकते हैं। करने लग जाएंगे तो इसको भी धागा बना सकते हैं, इसका भी। क्यों, उसकी बड़ी भी आती है रुई, ये वाली बड़ी आती है। ये छोटी है, ये देसी आंकड़ा, ये छोटा है, वो बड़ा जाता है,
मोटी
उसकी डोडी मोटी आती है थोड़ी।
हैंडलूम पे बहुत ज़्यादा आ रहे हैं, सीखने के लिए भी आ रहे हैं और बोलते भी हैं हमारे को कि काम सिखाओ काम सिखाओ। क्यों ये पहले तो बीच के अंदर बिल्कुल बंद हो गया था ये काम, अब दोबारा उठता है तो हर आदमी करने की कोशिश करता है। एक तो धूप में जाके बाहर काम करेगा, एक यहाँ पे करेगा।
उसमें पैसा पैदा होएगा, काम आएगा, काम करेंगे लोग, तो उसमें कर सकते हैं ये लोग। लेकिन इन्हों को अभी तक ये ध्यान नहीं है। जो ये पुराने हमारे ये कर रहे हैं, पुराने से वो भैया कर रहा है, ऐसे लोगों को तो ये कर सकते हैं और उनको सिखा सकते हैं। जैसे हमने ये चरखा सिखाया है उनको काटने के लिए, ऐसे सबको सिखाया जाता है।
ये तो हमारा शुरू से धंधा है। हाँ, अब आप मैम कहीं पे भी जाएं हम तो किसी को पूछते हैं कि यार तू क्या करता है, तो हम बोलते हैं यार मजदूरी। मजदूरी के अलावा हम वो बोलते हैं कि हम कपड़ा बनाते हैं। उसमें कितना फ़र्क हो गया, रात दिन का फ़र्क हो गया। एक तो इज्जत वाला काम करते हैं, ये बात है। और घर की घर के पास नहीं, घर ही हूँ। और सैनिटरी में जाता था, आज किसी के पास बात की, आज किसी के पास बात की, और फिर काम करके आ जाते थे और पैसों के लिए चप्पल तोड़नी पड़ती थी मैम। देखो मैम, सीखने के लिए तो जैसे अब गलीचा बनवा रहा हूँ मैं आज, अगर वो पास हो गया तो देखो मेरा फ़ायदा है इसमें, 2 रुपये मेरे को बचेंगे और उसको जो मैं करवा रहा हूँ उसको काम मिलेगा, उसको भी आगे से और भी डिज़ाइन सीखने को मिलेगी। अगर एक चीज़ में 1 मीटर ख़राब होता है कोई दिक्कत नहीं, एक सैंपल ख़राब हो गया है ना, लेकिन आगे तो वो सही करेगी। अब जैसे मैंने शुरू में काम किया, आपका काम किया सैंपलों का, लीरियों का, मेरे पास पता नहीं कितने सैंपल ख़राब हुए, लेकिन अब मेरे से हर सैंपल मेरे से करवाते हैं। सीखने को लिए कुछ तो मिलता है। देखो मैम, मेरा तो विचार ही है इस काम को आगे बढ़ाना चाहता हूँ। ऐसे नहीं कि आज काम कर लिया और कल इसको बंद कर दूँ, ये तो है नहीं कि हम सीख रहे हैं और दूसरों को भी सीखने को मिलेगा। कल हमारे बच्चे भी फटेंगे या नहीं फटेंगे वो तो अलग बात है। कल ये काम तो कर सकते हैं ना, मजदूरी के लिए तो नहीं जाना पड़ेगा कहीं पे भी।
बीज बोते हैं, बीज के अंकुर आता है, अंकुर आने के बाद उसे फल लगेगा, तो वो तो प्रैक्टिस अपने सामने 100% चीज़ है। लेकिन हम दूसरी जगह से लाएंगे तो उसका अपने 100% गारंटी नहीं दे सकते हैं कि वो 100% सही है। इसमें कहीं ना कहीं मिक्स आपको मिल ही जाएगा।
I am born and brought up in Rajasthan, and Rajasthan is a desert state in India. It is very dry climate and it gets very hot during summers and very cold during winters. So ankh is a plant which I have grown up seeing in my vicinity, in my neighborhood. So it is a wild plant which grows anywhere, doesn't require any care or proper plantation or proper water. So this is something which I have grown up seeing. My grandmother, she had woven carpet using arc fiber, so which is very special to me and it's a treasure which is there with me. So I think I have a long relationship with arc fiber.
देखो प्रोसीजर पर करता है सारा निर्भर। आप प्रोसीजर कैसे करते हैं, किस तरीके से उसका प्रोसीजर करके काम में लेना चाहिए। अगर आप सही ढंग से उसका प्रोसीजर कर ले जाते हैं बहुत अच्छी चीज़ बनेगी। अगर आप प्रोसीजर सही ढंग से नहीं बना पाए तो आपका आगे कपड़ा तैयार नहीं होता। जैसे रेशम है, रेशम क्या है, रेशम अपने आप कोई धागा नहीं होता है, रेशम के कीड़े होते हैं और उस कीड़े से वो धागे बनते हैं। फिर उस कीड़े को पालने के लिए अपने को रिसर्च करना पड़ता है, मेहनत करनी पड़ती है, उसके लिए भी उसके लिए खाद बनाना पड़ता है, उनमें कीड़ों को डाला जाता है, फिर उस कीड़े को धागा बनता है।
पूरा विश्वास है होएगा ये काम, लेकिन करना ही नहीं जानते हैं लोग, मेहनत भी नहीं कर सकते। मेहनत करेंगे ना वो करेंगे,
मेहनत करते हैं तो मेहनत के पैसे नहीं।
हाँ, मेहनत के पैसे,
मजदूरी भी होनी चाहिए। फिर अपने मालिक दिन भर के अंदर एक किलो काटे, उसको 100 रुपये दे, तो 100 रुपये में कौन करेगा काम।
ये खादिम पहले यही काम था, पैसा तो था कम और बुनाई थी, मेहनत थी ज्यादा। अब तो नहीं करते हैं, लेकिन
कि एक तो अपन धागे में ही ला के काम करेंगे, एक बना के काम करेंगे, 2 आदमियों को और मजदूरी मिलेगी। प्रॉब्लम की बात तो ऐसे है मैम कि हमारे को रेगुलर धंधा मिल जाएगा, फिर धागे के लिए नहीं रुकना पड़ेगा कि रात दिन हम काम भी कर सकते हैं। और अभी क्या है, हम आज काम कर लिए, कल धागा नहीं है, छुट्टी करो। और धागा खुद बनाएंगे, जितना बना लेंगे, जितना काम में लेंगे उतना बना लेंगे।
ये 99% है कि अगर प्रयास करें तो उसका धागा बन सकता है और उसका कपड़ा भी बनाया जा सकता है।
I crave no kingdom of my own, nor the joys of heaven. One desire alone have I, that the poor may suffer no more. That was Gandhiji's prayer. His heart was ever full of grief for our downtrodden. He knew that freedom would be but an empty shell if our many millions continued to be ill-housed and ill-fed. At the same time, Bapu was quick to realize the potential worth of our village crafts, crafts that are a part of our ancient heritage. And among these crafts, spinning and weaving held pride of place. Time was when the song of the spinning wheel and the rhythm of the loom were joyfully heard in every Indian home. And the beautiful fabrics woven in those ancient days were highly prized by our people. Not only by our people, for many of those fine fabrics crossed the seas to win renown around the world, helping India become a prosperous nation.
Hello, everyone. I'm so honored that you could all join, and I'll hand over to Rachel, who's been so inspiring throughout this journey.
Thank you so much, Bhaavya, and congratulations.
Hello, everyone. I'm so honored that you could all join.
Sorry about that. I had 2 things going on. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Congratulations, Bhaavya, on a really stunning video and presentation about your work. I'm so honored to be here. My name is Rachel Breen, and I'm a visual artist, and I'm a professor of art at Anoka Ramsey Community College in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the United States. I'm actually speaking to you from Jaipur. I'm here on a Fulbright fellowship, and I'm really honored to have been able to meet Bhaavya and also Tulika because of their connections with the Indian Institute of Craft and Design, which is my host institution for my Fulbright. Tulika is the director and Bhaavya is an alumni. So I've been able to be in contact with them, and I've been so inspired by being connected with this amazing institution. So my Fulbright is about sustainability, textiles, and fair trade. I came to India because I really felt like I needed to learn and I needed to listen. And so a lot of my journey has been about the entire theme of this conference, practicing solidarity. And I see practicing solidarity as listening, especially as a white woman from the United States, from the global north. My job is to really pay attention, to hear and listen and ask, how can I support the incredible work that is happening here in India? I have been so amazed by the inspiring, especially women who are artisans, craftspeople, activists, and leaders. And so with that, I'm not going to say a lot aside from the fact that to the Western audience that is joining us on this conversation, I invite you to join me in listening and paying attention and learning from these incredible women who have such vision and such imagination and such histories and connection to textiles and fibers and craft. I'm going to ask everyone here to take a turn at introducing yourselves, share your affiliation, and if you'd like to add how you understand and think about this idea of practicing solidarity, be my guest. And we'll have Bhaavya go first.
So for me, practicing solidarity, again, as you said, Rachel, it's about listening and it's about working together, and a lot to learn. I've learned a lot from everyone on this panel, for that matter. And I really, because I'm already really deeply attached to the project, I would rather want to listen to what everyone else has to say. You're on mute, Rachel.
Sorry. Thank you, Bhaavya. Tulika, could you please go next?
Yes. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Bhaavya and Rachel, for inviting me on this panel. And I'm Tulika Gupta, currently the director of the Indian Institute of Crafts and Design. I've been here for over 5 years now. And as the word solidarity holds a lot in itself. I feel that I feel connected. I feel that I'm here with the designers, with the artisans, with the people of the community, with the students, everybody working together towards a better future. Sustainability definitely has become the buzzword, but to understand it deeply, to put it in action, where sustainability, solidarity are there as values in everybody around us. Yeah, that's what I'd like to say. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Tulika. Arushi, could you go next?
Yes, sure. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for hosting this. This is pretty amazing. I am an educator and a feminist activist. And my work is largely based in Jaipur and in Rajasthan at the moment. For me, I think I feel like to begin with, like my personal sustainability as an individual who sort of kinds of feel like a misfit to the mainstream culture, but is also pushing at the edges and the boundaries of the existing culture. It's community what sustains me, community and solidarity. And in my work, both as an educator and as a feminist activist, like that's what I strive for, that how can we create spaces where we all feel that we belong, because our sense of belonging has been robbed from us for so long and in so many ways. I believe that like reclaiming that is sort of the most subversive thing that we could do at the moment.
Great, thank you. Let's jump into talking about this incredible process that Bhaavya has initiated. And the first question that I want to pose is, what could a restorative practice like this enable in the world? What could it mean for us socially, environmentally, and culturally?
Yeah, would you want me to talk about it, or is there, okay, yes. Rachel, I think it's very important what Bhaavya is doing right now, especially because it brings back, as Arushi just said, things that belong to us. So it brings back the kind of sort of environment that people were in. They can say that this fiber is grown here. It belongs to us. It's not a foreign fiber. It's not coming from anywhere outside. It's not being sort of thrust upon us. It grows. We learn to work with it. It is highly sustainable. It does not need the amount of water that cotton needs. And India is a big country. It's area-wise, it's a huge country. And putting it together that, this one fiber only belongs to India cannot work. So it has different regions, it has different geographies, different kind of plants and animals grow in different areas. So I think this is just the beginning. People are beginning to realize that we had certain legacies that have been sort of taken away from us. And things in the name of Indian have been thrust upon. Again, it could be linked to colonization. So a lot of things that were deemed Indian, that looked fit. For example, the dress of the Rajas and Maharajas, it was never so fancy as it was sort of made to be. And because, in the film, we were just watching Gandhi ji and his thoughts. In his autobiography, he's written about it. in the 1916 when BHU, Banaras Hindu University, foundation was laid. He writes that there were many Maharajas there, and I don't know, they were all dressed in their fancy clothing. I do not know whether this clothing was a symbol or sign of their prosperity or slavery, So it's very interesting to note that a lot of things have been thrust upon us. And, like how they've been frozen in time, that this is Indian, this is how it should be, etc. So I think this is very important, A, from that perspective, B, from the perspective of sustainability, from the perspective of locally available material, and also diversity. Otherwise, everything looks like everything else. So that the people of this region belong here, this is what they look like, this is what they like to wear, this is what they like to do. So unfortunately today, whether you go to Kashmir or you go to Kanyakumari, I'm talking about India, everybody dresses up in jeans and t-shirts, and it's like a monotony. So it's not like that, yes, you go to airports, they're all alike. So it's not that you've come to Jaipur, so it should look like Jaipur. You've come to, say, Banaras, it should look like Banaras, etc., etc. So I think it's very important from all these aspects. And scientifically speaking, if we have and if we can develop more fibers, why not? So, yeah. Yeah, I think I've been very long, but thank you.
No, that was fabulous. Thank you so much. Arushi or Bhaavya, any comments or responses to that? Or anything that you'd like to add to this question?
I think I would also like to add to this question that what does decolonization mean to all of us? But mostly I'm here to listen, Rachel, and I would also love to know your thoughts and your opinions on all of this.
I would absolutely echo everything that Tulika has just said about the importance of this being a local fiber that can be reclaimed. So I'm particularly impressed that you've found it. I'm really curious about how that happened. This kind of, obviously it's a part of your history, but what even made you think of, like, how did it appear, in your awareness? So that process actually seems really quite important. It makes me think about you as an explorer, as an artist, as an investigator almost, which is in some ways the kinds of skills that I think are needed right now in terms of reclaiming and regenerating the kind of sustainability that our planet needs. And I'll just add to something that Tulika said about clothing. One of the things that I have learned from being here is how ugly clothes in the United States are, and how the colors and the styles and the incredible sense of fashion is something that I've just so loved about being here in India, and that I hope to take back with me to the United States.
If I may, then I think to respond to your earlier prompt, I feel like I work in education because that's one of the main ways of sort of propagating oppression, and not just externally, but internally, making each one of us believe when we go into schools that we do not know anything, and everything that we know has to come externally, and currently also like externally from like knowledge systems and knowledge sources which have nothing to do with the land and people and the culture of this country. And I feel like projects like these, and I mean, I'm just thinking right now that how can sort of like kids and young people get involved in such projects, but projects like these, I think really, by reducing dependence on external sources, external validation, external economies, really build that sense of pride and self-confidence that is required for us to move forward on this path. And yeah, I think it's very exciting what these things can do socially and culturally is something we can't even predict right now. Because once once people actually start experimenting with it, and once people actually start feeling that sense of, as I said, like pride and self-confidence, what happens after that is, yeah.
To answer your earlier question, Rachel, how I came across this was actually a very funny story where I was just sitting down with the grandmother of one of the weavers, and we were having a conversation. And I was just trying to ask her that, did you always like weave? And she was spinning some yarn from cotton. So I was just asking her if she always spun cotton. She was like, no, we used to spin that. And I was like, what? And there was this just wilderness growing in her backyard. And that was arc that was growing in her backyard. And I just got so excited by that idea. I went to Shivani and I just started talking about it. And I think she also got excited by it. And we just went on our own trip of doing a secondary research on this. And she found so many evidences throughout history about this that it just took a life of its own.
It's a really great story. I mean, and in some ways it makes me think about this idea of practicing solidarity, that solidarity is not something that's just among humans, but it's also in solidarity with the planet Earth. And here you are paying attention to the environment and also to elders. And that is a way of learning, that you were listening carefully enough that you were able to say, oh, this is important. I need to learn about this and think about this and then build on it. And I would just also echo what Arushi said, which is we don't really know where these discoveries might take us. And so it's so important that we grab onto them and pursue them. And so I really commend you for that ability to pay attention to it and pursue it, because this has been a project already that's been a couple years in the making, and you stayed with it. So those of us on the call actually were able to read a research paper with undertaken by Bhaavya and another colleague of hers. And I was so impressed that they went through two kind of tests, and that kind of discipline and commitment to this kind of like, let's keep figuring this out, let's keep seeing if something can be done here is such an important part of the process. So, it's really wonderful that you've done that. And that's also, again, something for us to pay attention to, that this kind of work, this kind of staying with a process and seeing it through is a really important part of us coming up with solutions that we so desperately need. So just another question. So how does IRO IRO, Bhaavya's kind of waste reduction design company, I don't know if I'm describing it correctly, Bhaavya, how does that fit into this process? And yeah, so any thoughts about that, the role of IRO IRO as a brand and as an organization that's really trying to support these kinds of innovative sustainability efforts fit in?
Would it be okay, Rachel, to actually jump back into a question? I really wanted to understand what does decolonization mean to everyone here as a prompt? And if they've seen evidences of it in their own practice and what it has led to, what kind of impact it has led to.
Sure. I'm happy to start off with that. And again, I think that my response might be really different from everyone else's, just because I'm grew up and come from the global north. For me, I think a lot about decolonization as a process. It's something that I'm continually thinking about and working on. And I think about it as changing the narrative. How do we change the narrative? How do we, in the global north, work to decenter ourselves and understand alternative perspectives? I think we oftentimes were in the US. I was brought up to have a particular lens. And so my job and my experience, especially being here in India, is to try to expand that lens and also be more understanding of other people's lenses and their value. And I think that also means being really aware of all kinds of things that deepening my understanding of exploitation, of enclosure, and inequities, and how and learn understanding these systems to the extent that I can. And how's that for a start? I could go on and on. Something I've been thinking a lot about.
Thank you so much.
Yes, if I may just, add. You see, decolonization is a process that has begun across the world. And having participated in a few seminars which were based on colonization and the history of colonization, clothing, what I realized was, as Rachel just said, from different lenses. So I looked at it from purely the Indian lens. But after having met so many other people, I realized what Greenland had gone through, what America had gone through, what Australia had gone through, and what other countries have gone through. And somewhere I feel that how strong can a nation be, being small and tiny, and the kind of discipline that they could have so as to conquer the entire world and to colonize it. So somewhere there's a kind of I won't say appreciation, but amazement at this kind of an act that went through. And how could, a small community of people think that what they know or what they speak or what they eat is the right thing? And also what I felt in colonization and how could they do it is because they also took in something that was very local of that particular area. If you look at English as a language, it has so many words from India, so many words from Africa, not really Africa, but the South America and other places. There are so many words in the English language, and the language sort of expanded. It was also interesting to note for me that the first English chair in a university was in India, in Calcutta, not in the UK. They learned Latin and their refined languages. So it is very deep set in India. I think the number of Indians that speak English is much more than the number of people that are there in the United Kingdom. So looking at the population of the country and looking at how it reached every corner. And even today, if you go to the villages, a mother is proud to say that, look, my son speaks English. So that is like, something very great for them. So I think it's really deep-seated. And if we are trying to decolonize or bring back things that were there before colonization set in, it is not an easy task, first of all. So to make people understand that they are worth more than what somebody else tells them to be, or it is not only about religion, or it is not about, a lot of things have come in after colonization. So I think the whole concept of being close to nature, being where you are, being more local, being happy in what you have is trying to come in. But right now, if you look at the layers of society, it has come in only in the top layer or maybe, the second layer. Deep down in the villages and in, 65, 70% rural India, the mind is still colonized. It still looks up to the white skin, to people who speak in English, and everybody. And it's interesting to note that when you go there, for them, whether it's the United States or the United Kingdom or France or whatever, it's all rolled into one, and they admire all of them and they feel they're better than us. And there are jokes about that which say that, oh, when I went abroad, even the children are smart, everybody speaks in English. So what they have to realize is, their children are speaking in two languages, which is not easy. They can write in two languages, right from the beginning. They can understand the grammar of 2 or 3 or 4 languages, depending on which region you live in this country. So I think that sense of pride for a nation that is trying to decolonize, it's very important that people try and understand that there were certain things and we continue to live with those, in spite of whatever has happened. And in fact, in the area of craft, I feel a lot of decolonization still needs to happen, because people portray images like, we are working with these women will be benefited. They are a part of us. We all belong to this country and to the world at large. So talking about that, okay, if you pay an X amount, these women, and these are big brands that promote things like that. So I think all that decolonization needs to happen. The process has started. It will take time. Something like today, we are women on this panel. Maybe 150 years ago, if this panel were happening, there would be no women here. So probably this thing also started about women education, and here we are today. So I feel things will happen. It may take time, but it will happen. So yeah, but it needs to happen. And that's my take on decolonization.
Thank you. I have some follow-up questions to what you just said, Tulika, but I just want to see if Arushi wants to respond.
I think, thank you, Tulika, for saying it so comprehensively. I think I just want to add two more points actually to all of this. That while I was listening to both Rachel and Tulika, I was wondering, we still think of decolonial efforts as alternatives. And I think maybe what the process of decolonization has to do is how do the alternatives become the mainstream, and how does the mainstream become mainstreams, right? I think just questioning that single narrative is what is required. And then I was thinking that everything requires, for me, it's also a process of not looking outside, but looking internally in my own culture, in my own language, in my own land, in my own knowledge systems, in my own body, in my own being. And I think because, as Tulika rightly said, that it's also colonization of our minds, of our imagination, of our curiosities, of our aspirations, right? So how do we take it to that? And maybe our minds are colonized, but I would like to believe that our bodies, at the deepest of their beings, still know. And that is what the resistance is. And that is what sort of brings all of us here. So yeah, I think I agree with you, Tulika, that it needs to happen, hopefully soon.
Thank you, Arushi. That was really, really beautifully said. And I can't help but think about how marketing and social media plays such a big role in the colonization of all of our minds, and so kind of a question is, what do we do about that? I really appreciate, Tulika, what you said about kind of how brands use kind of the stories of these women to sell products and kind of and what do we do about that? And what is the solution, particularly for addressing colonization on a deep level? How do we address this colonization of the mind, and how do we get rid of it?
Yeah, true. It's not an easy solution, but I think education is the key. If at every level of our society, we're able to educate people that whoever they are, that is what they don't have to be. They don't have to try to ape somebody. They don't have to, or they don't have to pity themselves that, oh, we are this and somebody else is. Each person is a special human being, and we need to interact with each other at that level. It may sound very spiritual, but each individual is a being in himself or herself. And we need to connect at that level, and not at a level which is, higher or lower or somewhere like that. And that will happen when people, I keep thinking about these things. And I think that right now, because of the capitalism that's all around, and, a small thing like a packet of chips. So when you go to the villages, and the boys have 20 rupees, they'd buy a packet of chips rather than buy 2 bananas. And those 2 bananas are going to be they're going to give them more nutrition than that packet of chips of Lay's or Uncle Chips or whatever. But that is what marketing has done. If you eat this, you're cool. And if you eat a banana, you're not so cool. So that education and that confidence, and that will come when parents are confident, when school education system is confident, and they tell them, look, what you're doing is good, is best, you grow like this, and be in sync with people around you. Of course, everybody will never be in the same socioeconomic layer. That can never happen. But at least a sense of pride in their own being is very important. And I think that can only come through education. And the other thing is, because of the colonization thing, it was we and they, but now it's not there. So at least that we and them, or I and somebody else, that needs to sort of dissolve. And it will also happen if whatever we are producing is more universal in design, in the sense that we are not really producing things only for a certain layer, only for the certain elite, but also we look at the mass market, what people maybe in the villages, I don't know if I'm making sense, but it is to do with everybody having that kind of a lot with inclusivity, that whatever is being done, and when we talk about colonization, it's something like, in my mind, like gender, like how men have taken over, and now things are sort of, if you go to, I travel a lot, and if you go somewhere, you go to public toilets, you go to places, it's all designed. And there was a very interesting thing that happened here, City for All. So it's all designed for men, by men, the way they want. It's not, they don't think about the other half. What would they feel comfortable in? How do they like to sit? Where would they like to go if, they're on the roads? How can they take some rest? So it's been colonized by men, if I may put it like that. And the rest of the world has been colonized the way it has been. So to decolonize, I think the sense of pride needs to be instilled in every person right from the beginning, and a self-esteem. And to make it very clear that we are all a part of this society. It is inclusive. Whoever you are, wherever you are, you belong here, you belong to us, we all belong to each other. I think that sense has to get into people. And as Arushi was pointing out, they're taught things like this little girl in a village, she's proudly typing A for apple. She's never seen an apple in her life. She doesn't know what an apple is. So, so that kind of I'm not saying you shouldn't learn English. English is a very important language. We are able to converse because of that, because it's a language prevalent in the world. But you need to be more focused on the things that are around you. You need to understand the importance of local flora, fauna, people around you, and to live a happy life ultimately. So I think education is the key. I strongly feel education is the key. Only when they understand, and the teachers and parents feel good about themselves, and they make their children feel good, the decolonization will happen truly only then. Yeah.
Well, and it sounds like I completely agree with you, Tulik, and it sounds like also underlying what you're saying is how we convey respect and for all people is absolutely essential, and that respect can be conveyed and taught through education. But I think that's also interesting. How do we convey respect, and how do we empower people, or how are people empowered? Not that we do it, but how are people empowered to feel a sense of dignity and self-worth? Because that's what colonization takes from us.
Yes, yes.
I think something very interesting, Arushi said once we were having this discussion, that dignity is something that is everyone's right. Everyone has the right to feel like they are living a dignified life. And that stuck with me as the underlining proposition of any activity that perhaps we can take on.
and I'll add, just because this was a part of your movie, and also I watched some of the conference from yesterday, the idea of paying people what they deserve, understanding how much what we pay people is a part of that we show value. And I think this is really important in Western countries in particular, is to understand how important it is that we pay what things are worth, and how we understand value is part of the mindset that we really need to shift in order to convey to people that we value who they are and treat them with respect. Fair pay is absolutely critical to that.
Absolutely. There's actually a story attached with that, because when I started working and with and all of these female artisans, they were working with us. But whenever it come about money, they'd send their husbands to deal with me, so that the husbands would collect the money. But at a certain point, I had to be stubborn about that. No, because you worked on it, so I'll only give money in your hand, and you can choose what you decide to do with it later on. And as time went on, I started to see that they've kind of attached a sense of respect to their work and a sense of self-worth to the work, and that with the money that they were collecting, now they were saving up to. In the film, there was Savita ji and Pinky ji who were talking about how they don't want their daughters to suffer the same hardships they suffered. So they saved up money to send their daughters to Rajasthan University. One of them is becoming a professor right now, and the other is in first year. So that is the life that they wanted for their daughter. And they've told their daughters that for them, marriage is going to be a choice and not something that they have to do in order to live. So I think that is, for me, just empowerment from within. And as ma'am also spoke about, that realization of self-worth and self-respect coming from within, and a sense of pride coming from within, even though they don't want their daughters to do this work that they are doing, and they don't want their daughters to live the life that they are living. But they were able to build a life that they seem worth living to them. If any of you have any other examples, I'd love to hear stories.
Well, I would just add that, I mean, the importance of all of you being leaders and visiting villages and showing your leadership and conveying the importance of women having a sense of authority, just how critical I think that is right now. I've really been privileged and lucky to visit with a number of organizations that are led by women. I just recently was in Bikaner and visited with Shumita Ghosh, who works with Rangsutra, and then also Madhu, who runs Saheli Women in Jaipur. And these are amazing efforts being led by women, and how much that the leadership conveys to the women of these organizations. I just think that's so essential in terms of you showing your own sense of your self and what that communicates.
I think I would like to take a moment for like another kind of hierarchy, which I'm still figuring out how to actually like address in my work, but which I do think forms the basis of colonizing our minds, which is the adult-child hierarchy. In our culture, we largely don't question the fact that children have lesser power, are considered weaker, are considered to be entities who need to be taken care of and molded into these adults. And of course, there has to be a future, but that is also human life. Just because we have separated child rights and human rights does not mean that, you know, the experience or the human existence is also divided after 18 or after 21. So, and I feel like that that hierarchy, and especially because that's like schools or educational institutes are like the first social experience that a child has outside of the home or outside of their immediate environment. And what that means is that that's their first interaction with external systems. And what they learn there is that I am small. And that is just like extremely antithetical to anything that is associated with empowerment or decolonization. And so I wanted to take a moment to also bring light to that, because I think that's still not discussed enough. And Tulika, when you were talking about like, being able to respect each other and respect ourselves, I think again, if I am in a classroom, if I'm a child in the classroom and I'm just constantly hearing, तुम्हें ये नहीं आता, तुम ये नहीं कर सकते, अरे तुम्हें तो मुझे ही बताना पड़ेगा, right? Like all the things which say that you don't know enough and you are not enough. How am I ever going to be able to see myself as a complete individual or see my peers as complete individuals? So I hope that like we can also start acknowledging the wisdom that children bring, because their brains are actually working at a much faster capacity than any of ours. They are processing information like anything, and their minds actually haven't been colonized till they're 5-6 years old and start interacting with the formal system, and they have the kind of curiosity and imagination and questions which can push our thinking way forward than like what we can imagine.
Yeah.
Maybe we can go ahead to the next question. I mean, and feel free, this is a nice discussion with lots of layering. So feel free to go back to a topic that we've already discussed. But a question that I have for everyone is, what kinds of support, what kinds of solidarity do you need from the global north, if any? What are ways that we can support projects like Bhaavya's? What do you need? What do you want?
If I may say here, I think working together for maybe joint research, maybe things that, something like that, if has happened already there in, I don't know whether in the US or in other parts, if there could be local fibers over there which people would have worked on, and if that kind of information exchange could happen, or maybe a kind of a seminar or a workshop around it, where people interested in these kind of things across different parts of the world, whoever can have access to this kind of information. So I think joint research is what I would look at, because it gives perspectives, multiple perspectives. Yeah, I think that is important here. That I would say could form a good kind of collaboration for better results, is what I would think. Yeah.
I love that idea. As with Bhaavya's presentation, we have milkweed is a very common plant where I live. I have it in my garden. I love milkweed. We think of it as a food for butterflies, especially for monarch butterflies. So it's a very, very important plant in that regard. But of course, watching Bhaavya's presentation, all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I need to send milkweed here, or what can be done with this local fiber. It was such a good reminder of paying attention to materials that are in our own backyard and how we think about using them and what can be done with them. A part of the film that I also loved was learning that the seeds are actually food for cows. Amazing. So again, this incredible sustainable fiber where all the pieces can be used is really beautiful. Yeah.
Rachel, I love what you shared about milkweed and the fact that, like, this openness to learn from each other. I think that's probably in terms of solidarity from the global north. I think that is what I would want to call for. Like, and without stereotyping or romanticizing it. Right. So I think that's definitely one thing. I think also, I have no better way to say it, but to letting go of control and being okay with chaos. Because the entire world is actually living in chaos, both external and internal. And even the people in the global north know their internal realities. So maybe it's time to pull down that facade. Because what that facade is doing is, like, I can speak for the people I interact in India, right? Like, that's what makes it aspirational, because the facade makes it seem that that's perfection. And that perfection is possible. Perfection is a very human and a very Western concept. Perfection doesn't exist in nature. And I think, so that, like, that letting go of control, first at an individual level, then at a cultural level, and then at an institutional level, letting go of control on funding. I would say, like, yes, like, we need joint researchers, because, like, we need to collaborate and learn from each other. And there are a lot of skills that people in the global south need to work on. But at the same time, like, everything is controlled by money, let's face it. So I think that the decision-making power for where the funding goes and who the funding goes to needs to be more democratic. What are the topics that are considered? That decision-making needs to be more democratic. And of course, it would also be very important there to see that if we're talking about India, that it's not just like the upper caste, upper class demographic that gets access to that funding and decision making, because our minds have been colonized way more than people on the ground. So I would say these two things, and largely, which is like my personal passion and I have no idea what to do about it, is language. I think, of course, we need English, because, like, India won't exist without English. But at the same time, how do we, like, especially now with technology, you know, how do we bring in more people who cannot, like, who do not have access to this medium of expression? And how do we sort of create tools and processes to invite everyone into the conversation? Yeah.
I think something that really would be great to have at this point would be an access to all the archives, because the British Museum is way more rich in terms of Indian textiles than any Indian museum is. So just to have access to that archive, because it's very difficult to come across textiles made from this fiber. We were fortunate enough that one of our professors at IICD, Professor Shalu Rastogi, her grandmother had made a rug from this fiber, and that was just an amazing connect that just made everything full circle, come about full circle. And so we were actually able to feel and touch what a textile made from arc felt like. But that just made me think that there might be so many textiles in museums lying around, and we just don't know what fiber it is and how it was made, because nobody documented it. And from what I've heard about museums in Global North is that Indian textiles are just lying around, and Indian libraries are just there in basements. If we could have access to it, if they could be digitized, if we could study it, and find a way from that to bring this back into revival, I think that would be great, specific to this project. And of course, if as Arushi said, if there are funds available to kind of keep this research going. We had halted this research in 2020 because of the pandemic, but because of also the lack of financial resources, very honestly. We both, me and Shivani, who's the co-author of this research, who wrote 90% of it, we both aren't paid anything from this particular project at all. We just did it in our own free time and because we were passionate about it. So, and now because we got a small grant from RNM, so that was a huge push to have this research going on. So definitely what Arushi said about letting go of control and accepting chaos, which I feel in a way, this international conference is about ways of caring and practicing solidarity.
Yeah. Here I would like to add that, it's your first point about archiving is very true. There's a lot of material out there, thanks to their documenting abilities and putting it together and respecting what was there. So that is one thing. The other thing is, I'm just sharing with you, Bhaavya. We must also, and I will try to do that, as I told you earlier, push our governments too, because they are stakeholders here, much more than Global North. They are the stakeholders and they need to understand, they need to decolonize their minds first and understand that there is this much material here. And I'm sure our government has enough money to fund researchers like that. So somewhere or the other, a dent has to be put there that to invest money on these kind of things. And I think I told you earlier as well, I'm definitely going to try to push this, to make it visible that, look, this kind of research is very important for our country. And when we have finances, why look outside? They need to be just put in proper direction. So I think that is also very important, which we need to do. Yeah.
And I'll just add to that, this idea of museums is so important. I really want to echo that. The very first thing that made me start thinking about coming to India on a Fulbright was learning about Kanta. And in my own practice, I work with used textiles. So I was really fascinated with the use of used saris and the stitching of them together. And in my research, there was one museum in Calcutta that had a large collection of Kanta, but it's been closed since the pandemic. I believe it's been shut down. And I was really surprised, though maybe I shouldn't be surprised, that one of the largest collections of Kanta is actually held at the Philadelphia Museum of Art in the United States. And why? And
I can answer that why.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, I think because, by nature, people in India are, the common people in India are not great collectors. Very few people spend time and energy on collecting material. And that is also because they live with that material. So they don't look at it as something to be kept in the museum. In fact, this whole drawing room culture is again a very colonial culture. There were no drawing rooms. People lived wherever they lived. So, and they met on the streets or in the house, but there was no special room for people to come in and, to display objects. So that is why this whole concept of museum is very new to India. And even today, let me tell you, people do not realize the worth. I go hopping around telling them, look, you don't have enough material. Because I'm a researcher, because I'm into education, I find this very difficult. I found, as Bhaavya just mentioned, I found more material during my PhD on Indian clothing in the British Library and in the British museums, in the Fashion Museum at Bath, than in the museums in Hyderabad or Jaipur, where I was looking at for material. It's only because we think that it's not so important, whatever it is. And then another thing, the preservation kind of a concept. Now we are preserving material. Otherwise, we just let go in the rivers because of the sustainability thing that, okay, you will create something, it will, go away, and then something else you create. So that is why this missing link. and this is where it's very important we look at the material collected from India by the collectors over the last, whatever, 300, 400 years, because that material gives us a lot of information. So that is the answer to why, yeah.
And again, so connected to colonization. And I really appreciate that answer, some of which I already knew, but you really expanded on my knowledge, and I really appreciate that. And it makes me even think about some of the repatriation efforts that are happening now, more around sculptures, but it's really interesting to think about the idea of textiles, and should some of these textiles be repatriated to India? It's an interesting thing to think about. It certainly, being at IICD, the Indian Institute of Craft and Design, one of the things I've learned is how much these historic textiles teach people now about the making, about garments, construction, about embroidery patterns, about motifs, and how much they're used then to innovate and create new. And so how connected the process of design is to both the past and the present and the future. So very interesting to think about this idea of collecting and how the importance of preserving materials for both our heritage and for the future.
I actually have I'm wondering about something. It's probably a little disconnected, but I'm wondering, like, we are discussing decolonization in the context of what decolonization probably means to people whose lands have been colonized, right? But I'm wondering, like, what about the global north? What would the process of decolonization look like for them? And yeah, just that curiosity at the moment, in case anyone has any insights.
Well, I certainly think that there's huge decolonization efforts happening in the United States right now. I think the fights around the pipelines, gas pipelines going across native lands, are the best example. And there's really been incredible organizing, particularly on the part of women, Native Americans, happening. And so I think there's a lot of efforts, and we have a huge fight on our hands right now. Just even going back to this idea of chaos, and why, and the ways that so many people kind of hold the United States in high regard, or the West. The United States really is, I would say, in chaos right now. And there are many times when, since I've been here, especially, when I felt like gun violence in the United States right now. And there was just a terrible Supreme Court decision in regards to Native American rights. I believe it just happened yesterday. There's a lot of chaos right now, and a lot of assault. There's a lot of things for Americans to be very, very worried and concerned about. But I think that there's a lot to learn from the struggles that are happening around Native American rights. So I think there's a lot of solidarity happening between both Native and non-Native Americans to support environmental issues and other kinds of issues. So there's a lot happening, I think, very much. A lot of good work, but we have a big fight ahead of us, I think, right now with what's going on politically in the US. I think we could maybe go to some closing comments. I think we're going to I'm not sure what time the panel is supposed to end.
I think we can go into closing comments.
Okay. So I just want to give everyone a chance to say anything either that hasn't been said that you want to say, or any last kind of ideas for us to be thinking about. Think about the theme of this conference, ways of caring, practicing solidarity, and also this incredible kind of a project that Bhaavya has presented to us.
Yes, I think I'm really proud of Bhaavya's project, and I feel more such projects are needed in a country that is so huge in terms of fiber, in terms of textile, and also coming from the fashion and textile background, I feel also in terms of clothing. So a lot of rethinking, a lot of decolonization, trying to understand the roots, and maybe something that is better environmentally for this area. So, and for ourselves. So I think this is a very, very important step in that direction. And something I know it is like what do you say, first among equals. So equality is a big word, but yes, solidarity, being together with each other, trying to understand and respect each other for whatever we are, for whatever everyone is, and having a mindset that allows us to appreciate differences and to bring in inclusivity. So I think that is the key. And I'm really happy that we are having conversations around this. And thanks to all the organizers, and thanks to Rachel and Bhaavya and Arushi for interactions. So I think we all keep learning like this, and we hope to grow better in future. Thank you.
I think every time Bhaavya is talking about this project, like I am like jumping around like an excited child. I mean, because I can remember like how I was running after these blobs of fiber as a kid, with no awareness, of course, that, you know, it could have such a use. And I think that gives me a lot of hope, and it's very inspiring to see that someone is bringing in research and indigenous knowledge together in such a beautiful way, and then figuring out how does it connect to the larger economics of things. So I think thank you for doing this work, Bhaavya. It's very, very inspiring. Thank you for this conversation. I'm not a morning person, but this was a good start to the day. And love talking to all of you and hearing your perspectives. And as Tulika said, I think this is the beginning of solidarity for me, that we all come from different perspectives, different industries, but we know that ultimately somewhere things merge together, and that's why it's important to sort of remove those boxes and listen to each other. So I hope you all have a good day ahead, and thank you so much.
Bhaavya, do you want to say something?
I just am so grateful that everyone showed up so early in the morning and contributed. Thank you so much for sitting through everything. And this was really just such a lesson this morning, and it really made my day. We had a lot of struggle, the team in Arnhem would know, getting them the film in the middle of losing internet connection, and because of all the conflicts that are going on socially in India right now. But all of this conversation makes all of that struggle worth. So thank you so much to all of you. And Rachel, you have COVID, and thank you so much for moderating still. Shruti was tested positive in the morning, who was going to join us for this panel discussion. She's the country head for Fashion Revolution, so she couldn't make it at all. So thanks a lot to everyone who's come here. And I'd love to hear from you, Rachel, your closing comments or your reflection.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to say I'm not very sick, and I'm on the tail end of it, and I'm fine. So, and thankful that this conversation was on Zoom, so I could participate. So when I first arrived at ICD and was sharing with faculty what my research was about, everyone mentioned Bhaavya. Oh, you have to meet Bhaavya. You have to meet Bhaavya. So, and now I feel like I'm going to start the Bhaavya fan club, and just because I'm so impressed and excited and inspired by the work that Bhaavya is doing, and not just that the work is so multi-layered, that there's the IRO work, but all the other collaborations and projects, so that there's so much happening, and I'm so excited about that. And also I want to say, I want to start the IICD, the Indian Institute of Craft and Design fan club, because I'm also so impressed with the intersection of all these things. So what I'm learning in my Fulbright is about how all these things, craft, sustainability, textiles, alternative trade, social enterprise, how they all intersect. And they're really woven together in this incredible web. And the more we see these connections, the more we can support that as kind of a landscape rather than just being so kind of single-minded. But it's by seeing the intersection of all these things that we address climate change, that we create a fashion system and a garment industry that is more fair, that we support indigenous crafts. All these things are really connected. And that's one of the things that I think IICD really teaches students, is to see these interconnections. And I'm so thrilled to kind of see an institution that's doing this. I can't really think of any institution in the US, not that I know all of them, that's doing that. And so I'm really honored to be a part of IICD. And, you know, I was taking notes when we were talking about what you were sharing, ideas about ways that the Global North can support the kinds of efforts that you all think are important. So I have a lot of notes. I'm excited to continue the discussion. I think one of the other things that I've learned about this idea of solidarity is that it is about relationships. It's hard to practice solidarity if we're not connected. And so I feel very lucky to be here, to actually know all of you, Arushi, even though we haven't met. Now I feel like I know you, but you know, these kinds of connections are absolutely critical for us to building a network where we can make change together. And so I'm just really grateful to have built these relationships, and we now have a platform that we can continue to build on. So I'm excited about that and all the potential that presents.
I think just to add to that quickly, for me, studying at IICD in hindsight, the way IICD structures its curriculum, it's really decolonized design education, because you're thrown into the craft clusters in the first semester itself. And you're like really stripped out of any kind of entitlement you'd have about design as a profession from the get-go. So I think that was IICD, like now that I'm thinking back at everything, IICD is planting that seed that we need in order to be investigators as designers.
Thank you all. I'm honored to be a part of IICD as well. Yes.
And I would just add to the audience that's listening to us, I would encourage you to think about how you can build personal relationships with people on the other side of the planet. It's not easy, but it's also not impossible. You know, and it can be done online. I encourage people to reach out, to connect, and how it's just so important that we have relationships with people around the world in order to address, because these are global problems: climate change, the garment industry, building a world that is more sustainable and fair and equitable for all people requires us to be connected. So we need to do that.
Thank you so much. So we'll head into the closing presentation now. And I'm so honored, and again, thank you so much for coming so early in the morning for this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. So now we'll start with the closing presentation. I'll just share the screen. So what have we done so far with the fiber is that we've done a lot of trial and error. We've tried to hand spin it into yarn. When we ran our second pilot program, we found that the fiber shrinks significantly, and we've acquired and collected more fiber to experiment its elasticity elasticity, spinnability, and dyeability. We anticipate that we should be able to produce a fabric swatch from this fiber by the end of this year. What are some challenges we have? We have high dependency on weather conditions because this is something only grows in summers and we can only collect it in summers. So there's a specific time window for it. It is very time and labor intensive. Quantity for quality, there are large amounts of bales have to be processed to make viable fiber. It is not instantly economical beneficial and therefore not a top priority fiber. That is the discussion that we also had that right now, because it is in the R&D phase, we need a lot of funds to push it forward. And it comes attached with some social stigma where people, while it is a holy fiber, some people also believe that growing it in your home might cause tussles within the family. So we feel that, and in our research, it's shown that once it becomes something that is economically incentivizing people to grow it, these kind of social stigmas, they won't really matter. What are things in progress? We are collaborating with different universities. We have collaborated with Lady Irwin College for them to research this fiber scientifically in a textile lab. We are trying to collaborate with independent textile engineers for them to research on it in the independent labs and produce results. We are trying to also collaborate with organizations specializing in hand spinning and making of yarns. We will continue on trial and error on our own and develop the fabric. The plan ahead is to cultivate this fiber in a ground, in a field and collect it, to research varieties of this fiber and test performance properties of this fiber. One of the biggest questions that we have from the research so far is that how can we define the method of collection of the fiber? Because right now it's very labor intensive. How can we do it in a way that is conducive for everyone? We are already hand spinning arc, but we want to see what kind of different yarn counts we could get to weaving from this yarn, and then to develop a product range that is appropriate for a global market. So that has been us. If there are any questions, we'd love to take them. Or I really don't see any questions though. Should we finish? Thank you so much for having us. It has been a really great start and a push that this project really needed. So thank you to all the organizers for having us and hosting us. Hopefully next time we meet, there would be some more progress within this project. And it's been really exciting to see all the other projects that this platform is showcasing. Thank you.